Hi, I'm Elise, this is Witch Way, and in this video I'll be taking you through the witch lore of Season 1 of Salem. Released in 2014, this horror drama stars Janet Montgomery as Mary Sibley, Ashley Maddoquay as Tituba, Shane West as John Alden, Seth Gable as Cotton Mather, Elise Eberly as Mercy Lewis, Tamsin Merchant as Anne Hale, Xander Berkeley as John Hale, Stephen Lang as Increase Mather, and many more. It's 1692 and Mary Sibley, the most powerful woman in Salem, has brought in Cotton Mather, urging him to seek out the witches who are plaguing the citizens of the town. In truth, it's innocent blood that is being spilled, as Mary is powerful in more ways than one. She and her coven seek to destroy Salem by turning the people against one another. But someone from Mary's past is back, and this leads her to question her plans. And by the time Increase Mather arrives, who has a much more direct approach than his son, the witches have given him more than enough rope to hang them with. This is a fictionalized telling of the Salem witch trials, which took place between 1692 and 1693, but some characters and events ring true, such as what happened to Giles Corey. Refusing to give a plea to his accusations, he died while literally being pressed for an answer. John Alden and Tituba were also indeed accused in Salem, but escaped the noose. 19 others weren't so lucky and were hanged after being found guilty of the crime of witchcraft. We see 4 young girls hanged in the series, but only 2 share names with those of the trials, Elizabeth and Susanna. But both of these actors also appear in American Horror Story Coven, one ironically also being hanged in the Salem witch trials. You can see my witch lore review for more on that series. We also see Bridget Bishop head to the gallows, another inspired by the real-world victims. During her trial, it was purported that she made puppets for her spellcasting, just as we see Mary Sibley doing in the series. Mary's maiden name is Walcott, named after one of the accusers during the Salem witch trials. Her home in the series has a very unique name.
I suggest you get you home to Mr. Sibley's House of Seven Gables.
This is a real colonial house in Salem and inspired Nathaniel Hawthorne's The House of the Seven Gables, which has undertones of witches and the supernatural. From this house, Mary has the ability to travel outside her body to terrorize her victims, such as Mercy Lewis. She was one of the real-world accusers during the trials who, just like in the series, reported that the likeness of the accused would appear to her and cause her harm. This was referred to as spectral evidence, something that the real-world Cotton Mather firmly believed in, as well as the fact that witches gained their unearthly abilities through a pact with the devil. We can see a woodcut of a witch sealing this deal with a kiss to the devil's backside. This image comes from the Compendium Maleficarum, a 1608 witch hunter's guide, but the text underneath is from Cotton Mather's very own book, The Wonders of the Invisible World, published in 1693, defending his actions during the trials. John Hale, another of our characters, also wrote a book, but instead of defending their role in the trials like Mather, he instead critiqued the trials. Included in this book is an event which we see in the series, where some girls did try with an egg and glass to find her future husband's calling, till there came up a coffin. Cotton can be seen referring to several other books in the series where we see some real-world texts, including Seducimus Triumphatus by Joseph Glanville from 1681, and images from Ulrich Molitor's On Witches and Diviner Women from 1489, depicting witches summoning a storm. We also see the woodcut from the Nuremberg Chronicles depicting the Witch of Berkeley being carried away by the devil on horseback, worked into this image, as well as a pentagram which in this time period was not yet associated with witches. Later, we are joined by Cotton's father, Increase Mather, who was also involved in the trials, but that is where the similarities with the real-world Salem trials seem to end, and other witchcraft beliefs are incorporated into the show. Increase burns accused witches at the stake and says he did so elsewhere. Witchcraft was considered a felony or a crime in England and its colonies, so if found guilty, the accused were hanged, as was the punishment for criminals. Though in the series, Increase was travelling from Germany, where they did indeed burn witches. He was travelling on board a ship which became becalmed. This was due to the fact that a witch had knotted the wind. This was inspired by tales of magicians who would sell wind to sailors in the form of knots. When untied, these knots would release their wind into the sails. Increase Mather also seems to favour torture as a method to elicit confessions, such as the ducking stool, and we see the use of a witch's bridle. Both of these were used as forms of public humiliation against scolds, outspoken women, and eventually witches. I cannot find records of torture methods being used in Salem, though it was definitely used at earlier trials, and was indeed encouraged and described in detail in another witch hunting guide, the Malleus Maleficarum, which we hear briefly mentioned in the series as part of an exorcism.
Malleus Maleficarum.
We also hear something else in the series that is also mentioned in this book.
My granny used to scare us silly with those witch stories. But she'd really terrify my brothers. She told them witches could steal a man's...
There is a whole chapter dedicated to this entitled How, as it were, they deprive men of their virile member. Unfortunately, this same woman who heard this story is later accused of witchcraft herself in the series and is searched for a witch's mark. Mercy is also searched for a mark, to the extent of her hair being shaved off of her head, as it was believed this mark may be concealed. Finding this mark would identify a witch, as it was said that this was where a witch's familiar would be suckled, and this is how they were marked by the devil. These witches do indeed have familiars who serve them. One of the witch leaders is known as the Salem, named after the harvest festival that inspired Halloween. This actress has also portrayed a witch before as the Sea Hag in Charmed and the evil Delaney Hallow in All Hallows Eve. In this series, she has the ability to summon the dead. Tituba also seeks to speak with the dead using an invocation of the spirits that you can find in the Veritas Justitiarum Label. These witches do not meet on All Hallows Eve, but another special night. Legend has it that on May Day's Eve, witches would travel to the Brocken mountain range to dance with the devil on Walpurgis Night. Some of our witches at this Sabbath have their heads shape-shifted into animals, probably inspired by this woodcut from the aforementioned On Witches and Diviner Women. But some, such as Mary, choose to travel spiritually to the Sabbath with the assistance of a broom, but not in the traditional way. This is inspired by the theory that women anointed broomsticks with certain herbs that had to be inserted rather than ingested for them to have their intended effect, without the stomach upsets that some of these herbs could cause. Mercy and her girls also perform their own mock Sabbath and dabble in other magical activities, such as the aforementioned divination method, as well as light as a feather, stiff as a board. This is no doubt a nod to The Craft, and now that's a throwback. This series scores for lore, history, and the craft. There are so many layers to these witches, and I can't wait to find out what happens next in seasons 2 and 3. This series came highly recommended by many of you, so I'm glad I finally got around to watching it. If you have any other witchy recommendations for my upcoming witch lore reviews, please let me know in the comments, and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and share it around with anyone else who you think might enjoy this witch lore. And as always, thank you very much for watching here on Witch Way.